the church. Beyond Sunday, beyond Sunday. Yes, we are Wheeler beyond Sunday.
Welcome, friends. Tonight we are having an interview with Charles Maynard, who is a colleague of mine and a friend, and so I look forward to this time together. As you know, we've taken a bit of a break with our typical podcast where we have a group of young adults who spend some time conversing about the Sunday sermon, giving them a break as they need that every now and then, and doing some interviews with some different people. This coming Sunday, we are going to be observing Holy Humor Sunday at Wheeler, and I'll mention that later in our podcast. But when I thought about that, and also the fact that we were in a bit of a crunch to get this podcast lined up, I thought of none other than Charles Maynard. Charles, as I said, is a colleague. He's an elder in the Holston Annual Conference, serving as the pastor of traditional worship and generosity. Got that right, didn't I?
Right.
At Cokesbury United Methodist Church. But also he has served as the founding director of the Friends of the Smokies, for those of you that love the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and also served as the director of advancement at the International Storytelling Center in Jonesborough, Tennessee. And so that last job that he had with the Storytelling Center, plus his role as a theologian and pastor, is what led me to ask him to be a part of this conversation. And so tonight we're going to be talking about humor, the place of humor, especially in worship. And so Charles, welcome. Is there anything you want to say just as we get started to let people know a bit more about you?
Well, I'm glad to get to be with you, Ginger, and Wheeler. I got to be with them on their 200th anniversary, and that was a great moment, a high moment. They had really done so much about history.
They're very proud of it.
And Wheeler's history is more than just Wheeler's history. It's
right.
Churches before Wheeler and really a part of our conference's history.
Yeah. It's a wonderful church, and they are very proud of their history. Their archives, they keep up with those very well.
Yeah.
And one of the things, kind of a little side note to that, we've done some work in our narthex and kind of making it more of a gathering space. And so we're going to have one of our ladies is going to paint a tree on the wall, kind of a story tree. And we're going to interchange pictures of our archives from archives.
Oh, wow. That's
at different times of the year based on what's going on. So just kind of help people remember the story that we have. So yeah, they're proud of their history, as they should be. So
well, one of the marks that you didn't mention, and probably for good reason, is that a number of years ago when Bishop Swanson was with us, he asked me to. He called me on the phone, and I was on the conference staff working with camping at the time. And he said, Charles, I've got this idea. I want you to summarize annual conference in 8 minutes and make it funny.
Yes.
And we're on the phone. I was kind of stunned. I thought, there's no way to pull that off. You can't get ready for it. So anyway, I said, I don't know if this is a good idea. I said, humor is subjective. What some people think is funny, other people may not. And you can't get ready for it until annual conference. And I had these excuses, and there was just silence on the phone.
Yeah.
And he finally said, you do understand we're not having a conversation, don't you?
No choice in the matter then.
Yeah, and I said, I do now, and I will enjoy doing it. And he said, I thought you would.
Well,
so
now, Charles.
That's how that developed.
Yeah, well, and you have done that wonderfully. We have enjoyed that so much at the end of annual conference, just that wrap up that you do and how you do that. I mean, it's just beyond me how you're able to do that. And now the dark dog is biting my hand. But I've always loved that. Everybody looks forward to that, not just because it's in the end of annual conference, but they look forward to.
Right. Nobody even knows that. They're just like, okay, this is the last thing we do. We get to leave now.
Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. So, and we appreciate your doing
that. It's a lot easier to be funny at the end of annual conference than it is at the beginning.
And definitely a lot more than during some parts of annual conference too. So.
Oh, yes, very.
Oh goodness, well, we're going to just dive right in and
Yeah.
talk about the topic of humor in church and especially worship. And I think you probably are familiar with the fact that a lot of people, when they mention why they don't attend worship or don't attend church, of course, there's the whole relevance issue, and now we have people who have never even been in church before.
Right.
That generation that has come up without ever having gone to church, but a lot of people have also said through the years it's because it's boring. It's not something that they enjoy. They like something that's more, for the lack of a better word, entertaining or at least enjoyable. I think in most
Well,
recent, go ahead.
yeah, and I think enjoyable is the word. I think
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah. And in recent years, I think we have begun to see a lighter spirit in worship, whether it be both the high church or the low church. But how did we ever get to the point of thinking that worship had to be a solemn affair to begin with?
Oh, that's a great question. And you sent me some questions, and I've thought about that most of today. In fact, I'm like, how did we get in this corner? Uh, how did we paint ourselves into this corner of, gee, why are we not? And and I think back to your word, enjoy,
Hmm.
um, which of course is related to joy,
Right.
is how could worship how could we evolve to where worship is not joyful,
Yeah.
and enjoyable, that people smile, and because you don't tend to sit calmly through enjoyable things,
No, no.
um, and so, I, but I think we've made it to where, um, I think we've gotten too deep into instruction,
Okay.
preaching, that it centers around preaching. And so we're going to pick hymns that match up with the sermon. I mean,
Hmm.
you and I plan worship all the time. Um, and that's part of what we're doing is we're trying to move in a certain direction.
The
Um,
flow.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, um, I, I get to work with a very talented um, worship director,
Mhm.
uh, Marcelo Urias. And first of all, he has a wonderful sense of humor. And so working with him is enjoyable, but delightful.
Yeah.
And and there are moments that we will talk about that. Like, this doesn't seem fun. This
Mm.
we haven't moved in a way that, and you know we've worked ourselves into such a serious moment. Not to say that we're not in serious conversations about serious things,
Right.
um, but if children can't enjoy it, I worry about that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Jesus had to have been fun.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So,
Well, I
yeah.
know, but it's
Well,
like kids
not
would
that we
not
can't
have
talk
wanted
about
to
it
hang
now.
around him,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so why, and I mean, that's the question. Why have we worked it up to where we're not that way anymore?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, we deal with heavy things. We deal with justice. We deal with mercy. We deal with forgiveness. These are not fun, enjoyable, fun kind of topics, light topics.
Right.
Um, but I got to thinking again, the question, and I got to thinking about funerals.
Hmm.
And many people have said to me afterwards, wow, I haven't laughed like that about my dad in years. Now, the thing is, I didn't invent this stuff. The only way I knew some of those things about that person's dad was because they told them to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they told them in fun ways. And so I tend to try to reflect that back in a funeral and say, oh, well, I heard this story about John, and you relate that. And and maybe a trait that John had that could be annoying, but when you call it out, people would smile like, "Yep, that's
Yeah.
him," you know, is and not picking at somebody. I don't mean that, but I'm saying I think even in that moment, the the key is to honor someone,
Hmm.
but to only do it seriously isn't always
Yeah.
a way of honoring someone. And so let's apply it, not that worship is a funeral, but sometimes it's worse than funerals. Um, I think if we're honoring Jesus, if we're worshiping God, I mean, God created us. God has got to have a great sense of humor.
I've
Uh,
heard that said so many times before, and
I
probably
mean,
have said
look
it myself.
around,
Yeah,
just
yeah, really.
read the room.
Yeah,
Look down the aisles at things,
yeah,
at the weird little quirky things that we all do.
yeah. Yeah,
I
if
mean,
God used emojis, it would be the rolling my eyes.
exactly, exactly. Um,
So,
but I think we've taken, it's not that we're taking not taking God seriously. I think we're taking ourselves too seriously.
yeah, yeah.
And and then we've shifted attention away from who we're worshiping, why
Oh,
we're
that's a
there.
good point.
That
Yeah,
we're no longer worshiping God. We're trying to uh, not worship our sensibilities, but have our sensibilities about us.
yeah. That's a good
Um,
point. That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
God does some funny stuff.
Yeah,
Even in the scriptures, you
yeah,
read through.
yeah.
I don't want to jump through, but one of the things you pointed out was that the word laugh isn't really in the Bible a lot.
Right.
And sometimes when it is, it's a negative thing.
Yeah. Even God laughing at someone who's trying to plot against him. So yeah, sometimes it's in a way of
Right,
mocking
right.
someone.
Well, and
And
I mean, we just did Good Friday the other
yeah,
day, and there's
yeah,
the mockery. Uh, they don't really use the word laughter, but that's what was going on is
yeah,
people laughing, saying, "Look, he says he was going to do all these things, and now he's hanging on the cross. He can't even do anything for himself."
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what a, I mean, really, if, this is a rough Charles Maynard translation of the original Greek, but it's what a joke.
Yeah,
A Messiah, what a joke.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and and Paul does call it foolishness,
That's true. Yep. The cross is
and
foolishness. Yep. Yeah.
um, and the fool, play the fool, um, that has a humorous
Yeah.
connotation to it.
Yeah.
Um,
You
so
mentioned you mentioned children. That if children can't enjoy or can't have fun in worship, something's wrong. And of course, what do a lot of churches do today? They take the children out of worship,
yep,
so that the adults don't have to worry about them making noise or interrupting or whatever, or because they think the kids aren't going to understand anything. And of course, you mentioned that you had been to Wheeler for the homecoming, or not homecoming, but the anniversary
the
celebration,
anniversary. Yeah,
and I guess that was you probably saw the children at
I
the
did.
table
I
with the
did.
grace space.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you
And
know,
and there's just constant motion and
oh yeah,
I, if I mean I guess you could say noise. It was it was
it's
never
life.
distracting to me.
Yeah, it's
Um,
signs of life, to me in the life in a
yeah,
church.
yeah.
But there's also there's humorous moments with it too, because every now and then one of the children will respond to a question in the sermon, and
And you
sometimes
don't
it's
even
on
think they're
target.
listening.
Oh yeah, yeah. And sometimes it's on target, sometimes it may not be, but the congregation, has learned to enjoy that and to sometimes laugh and of course with the children's time when they come up to the altar for the children's time, that sometimes can be quite humorous,
Oh
um
yeah. It could
but
get out
but
of
there
hand
are
real fast.
ways, yeah, even when it's supposed to be a solemn time in the church year, like we just came through Lent. There are ways even then to interject humor, and we'll talk about that some more in a bit. But
Well, we almost had it this year.
mhm.
April Fool's Day fell during Holy Week.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but every now and then, April Fool's Day will fall on Easter.
yeah,
I think is great. Um, I just think that the resurrection's the ultimate joke. But see, we don't see it we don't see it in a fun way.
Right.
We try
We
to,
focus on the miracle of it, not the God laughing in the face of death, kind
right,
of
not the absurdity of it.
right.
I mean, that's what humor is it's the unexpected,
Mhm.
right? Tragedy, you can see the end coming. Like this is not going to turn out well. That's
Yeah,
tragedy. Um, Comedy, you can't see the end coming. That's what makes it funny.
right. It catches you off guard.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that encounter with the unexpected,
Hmm.
um, the surprise, the in this case the joy, but that's not where everybody was on Saturday
Right.
in the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. A lot of people will observe Silent Saturday,
right.
and keep that day very holy and contemplative. So, in anticipation of Sunday. So,
Well,
um,
and I think that's the other part of it is um, not everything we do is hilarious. Not
that's
everything
true.
that happens to us is funny, but to never allow it to be funny,
Mhm.
that's when we're off track, it seems to me. Is that there's got to be this give and take, that there are serious moments, and that
Right.
there are moments that, a funny joke is just the wrong thing to do,
Yeah.
to quote, lighten the moment. No, there's some moments that are so tragic, that are so sacred, that no response is correct,
Hmm.
serious or and I think sometimes we associate things being funny as flippant, that they're whereas I think some things are intentionally meant to be funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yet,
Yeah. I remember when Greg was sick, he would quite often say things that just I would cringe, when he would say them. But for him, it was just his way of dealing with his illness, and it helped lighten the mood of everybody else too,
well, and
and
also to have been around Greg
hmm.
and to have never been funny and silly with him, see, would have not been natural.
Right.
You enjoyed being around him before he was sick.
Yeah.
Why would that have been something that would have stopped that?
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Because that would have imprisoned him,
Oh, definitely.
and so he would do that in order to kind of say, "Yep, I'm still here."
Yep. That's right.
I'm. Uh, I mean, he did have a great sense of humor,
He did. He
and
did. He sure
I,
did.
to have denied that because, well, this is too serious, we can't, uh, you know, talk about that. I think about a time my dad began. He didn't have Alzheimer's. He just had
Mhm.
some dementia, and Dad was a builder, and so anyway, I, I had taken him to the doctor, and we were in a part of Chattanooga where he had built some houses.
Mhm.
And at some point in our lives, we had gone around and taken pictures of all these houses Dad built and made a book out of them so that he had, you know,
Oh, that's
this
cool.
book of all of these
Yeah.
places he'd built. So we were near this place, and Chattanooga and that area had changed a lot in the last 25 years. And I said, Dad, if we went down that way, I pointed to the right, um, you built and I named the family, you built their house. And I said, that house isn't here anymore. They bulldozed that whole neighborhood and they've got condos down there. And my dad sat there for a second and just looked at me and he said, son, I have no idea where we are right now. And he just grinned. And I said, okay, never mind then. And he got tickled. I mean, he laughed. But I mean, even in that, he was able to somehow make a joke out of, yeah,
Yeah,
my memories. I got no idea where we are. And it got us both tickled.
great.
And he kept this little twinkle sense of humor the
Yeah.
whole way,
Oh,
even
it's
though at
wonderful.
times he struggled just to know where he was.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's
And
wonderful.
and so to not have laughed at that moment. I mean, we both laughed.
Right,
Would have
right.
I think would have desecrated the moment.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah, yeah,
Instead of, oh, Dad, this is serious. This is a bad
yeah.
thing that's going on. Eh, you know, uh, he he want he wasn't driving anymore. And at one point he turned to me and said, they won't let me drive anymore. And I said, Dad, I'm one of them. And he said, of course you are. It laughed.
Now give me my keys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so but see, to say, oh, well, we can't, this is too serious. We can't
Yeah,
laugh about these things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and again, I think it goes back to that word enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
we have
So that word joy or some form of it is in scripture some 400
a
times,
bunch of times. Exactly.
and a tenth of that number is what we find in laughter. So why do you think there's not more passages of scripture that deal with laughter that comes out of joy, not the mockery, but the true laughter that comes out of
Right.
joy? Because they had to laugh. People laughed. I mean, you have the story, of
Well,
course, Sarah laughing when she learned she's pregnant,
I was going to say, that's a great story.
yes, it
And
is.
and we don't tell it that way.
No,
We don't tell it as a funny story.
but
And
it's hilarious.
it is. I mean, come on. An old
It's the
lady.
unexpected.
Seriously. I mean, it's funny that she seemed to be the only one that got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they said, why were you laughing? See, they call her down on it. And she even
Right.
said, oh, no, I wasn't laughing about that.
Yeah.
No, that
But of
was
course, that was your patriarchal society,
exactly.
so,
But I mean, you're right. Think about it. Isaac means laughter.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
So you've got this guy named Laughter.
Hmm.
Um, and we don't approach that section of the story that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we don't.
I mean, the Psalms are full of joy, but only a few that mention laughter, but they're filled with joy, singing praises and dancing and all of these things that
Right.
that expressed express that joy, but you don't hear many or read many that refer to laughter.
Well, yeah, but let's go with. I think there were stories that evoked laughter in the
Mhm.
audience that heard them originally,
Yeah.
and we've translated that out. Genesis,
Mhm.
the first story. After the creation poem of Genesis 1, we get this couple.
Yeah.
And
The campfire story.
yeah, but there's a funny moment that the original audience would have hooted. And that is that when they eat the fruit off this tree, that they were told specifically, don't do this.
Yeah.
They do that because they said, what the temptation is, that's not going to make any difference. They get ashamed and they dress themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Have you ever held a fig leaf?
I'm not a fig fan, so no,
Right?
but
Do
I
you
understand they're
know what
rather
a fig
itchy.
leaf looks like?
Yes, I do. Yes. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know that it's covered with little hair-like things that are sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
Not
heard
that
it's
they'll
quite
cut you.
itchy. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That these people are so ridiculous
Yeah.
that that's what they choose to clothe themselves with.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of
Okay,
all these other plants that they have been
sure.
blessed
But they're
with.
in the Garden of Eden. They could choose
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But that's the one they choose. Well, see, the original audience would have thought, oh, that's very uncomfortable. They would have laughed. And
Yeah.
the end of the story is God clothes them with animal skins.
Yeah.
Oh, much better clothing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, but see, nobody laughs at that when we read it.
Right. Right.
But it's funny. It
Yeah.
really is. And the original audience would have laughed out loud.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and there are other moments in Genesis, I think, particularly that are really funny kind of moments.
And I say campfire song, but the campfire story, because you can envision people sitting around a campfire listening to that and other stories, especially like you mentioned in the book of Genesis, just listening to those stories and yes, laughing, because what do you do when you're at a campfire? You laugh.
Oh yeah.
You're either laughing or you're telling scary stories, one or the other,
Well,
you know.
true, true. There are those moments, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the Joseph telling his brothers his dreams, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because poor old Joseph has no idea what a horrible. And finally, his dad says, "Okay, you got to stop. You're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
you put your mother and I in that last dream, and you got to quit telling these dreams."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the great thing is the funny end of it is it's the dreams. It's his ability to dream and interpret dreams that get him out of trouble and save them.
Right. Yep.
Well,
Save them from
but
the
it
famine.
starts ridiculous and
Yeah.
it moves to this other thing. See, well, I mean, that's just great storytelling.
It is. It is. You mentioned a while ago Jesus. There's no references of Jesus laughing at all, and of course, um, not just in the Gospels, even artwork.
Right.
The artwork that we have seen through the
Not
centuries.
not old artwork.
No, even
Yeah.
up to this day and
Yeah.
time, does not depict Jesus laughing or smiling. I mean, he's still very solemn, very serious. There's just a few pictures as of recent years. One of those was a paint, or not a painting, but a drawing
Right.
that was done by a member and an employee of the United Church of Canada, Willis Wheatley. And
Yeah.
and it's just 50 years old in 2023, so 53 years old now.
Wow.
Um,
I didn't
so
remember it was that
yeah,
late.
that recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we know that Jesus definitely carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he surely expressed joy and smiled and laughed, don't you think?
Oh, I do. Well, like I was saying, I don't think children would have wanted to hang around him.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and I mean, me in parables, I don't think we laugh at parables enough.
Yeah.
I think there are there are funny parts of parables. Also, I think there's fun parts of his preaching. Uh,
Hmm.
he uses the image of um, God as a mother hen gathering
Hmm.
her chicks, and then
Yeah.
the next thing he talks about is Herod as a fox.
Yeah.
Now that's funny,
Yeah. And even some of the Sermon
right?
on the Mount. Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
even some of the passages in the Sermon on the Mount could be seen as being funny. The extremes that you have in there, that we read about, turning the other cheek and plucking it out of your eye, just those images can bring humor.
Well,
Why do
yeah,
you think?
and see what I'm saying is even if he doesn't get depicted as
Hmm.
having that sense of humor, it survived.
Yeah.
It just didn't get translated that well. I mean, that's one of the things that's one of the things that gets lost in translation is humor.
Hmm.
It's very stories can survive translation, but humor it's more difficult because humor puns don't translate.
Right.
Um, I mean, let's go back to Genesis. There are tons of puns in Genesis. They just aren't in English. They're puns in
Yeah.
Hebrew.
Right.
And so you get these fun little things. Well, see, that would have caused people to smile.
Yeah.
They might not have broken out laughing, but they would have thought, huh, that's a funny way of saying that.
That
But
that's where I have appreciated like Amy Jill Levine, who
yes,
writes, her books and of course her teaching. She's a New Testament professor, but she's Jewish. And so she brings that Jewish context to what Jesus taught and the stories, the parables, and everything he did. So I think it's helpful to really look at that because it does help you to see it in a different light and to understand it from the Jewish perspective. And sometimes it's not even close to what we have understood it to mean and to be.
Well, and see, like I say, I think that we've translated, and I don't mean that somebody said, "Oh, we got to get rid of this humor." It's not that.
Right.
It's just that when you're putting it into another language, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
To get that across. I mentioned Marcelo Urias that I get to work with in worship. He's Brazilian. So his first language is Portuguese. And there are moments that he'll say, well, in Portuguese, this is the way we would say it. And it's an idiom or something that's hilarious, but not in English, it's not.
Yeah.
And he will say every now and then, I mean, he's got great, he's been here for many, many years. He's got great command of English. Yeah. But there are even times that we'll use an expression or something that is funny, and he'll say, I don't get that. I understand the English. I just don't see why that's funny.
Yeah. Even those of us that have grown up speaking English don't always understand, from one side of the country to the next.
True.
Region, Southerns and the Southern and Northern and Midwestern, we all have our colloquialisms that only we understand,
Well, yeah, and you're right. I think we miss some of the humor because we're not listening for it.
We're listening for the lesson or the little kernel of truth.
Right. But we're not listening. We've quit listening to the story and we're trying to find the meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And see, that's, what is it? Robert Frost said, poetry is that which you lose in translation. And I would insert the word humor for it, the same thing. And I mean, I agree with Frost. I think we lose the beauty of the poetry of some of his stories in the same way, because we're putting them into English and we don't hear it anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because we're looking for something else instead of, that's a cool story. Instead of, what does that story mean? I mean, there are some great moments in some of those stories that the audience would have laughed and thought, oh, wait, that's funny. Because again, humor is the unexpected. Nobody expected the third character in that story about a guy getting beat up on the road to Jericho to have the ending that it had.
That's right.
We've heard it over and over and over again. Yeah, it's the Samaritan. We get it. The audience they would have gasped.
Yeah.
And it would have been like, you got to be kidding. A Samaritan? And it was completely unexpected.
Yeah. And then they would have had to have wrestled with, is a Samaritan really going to take care of me if something happens, or am I going to let a Samaritan take care of me if something happens?
Yes. But see, the guy wanted to have a discussion, and Jesus said, well, let me just tell you a story instead.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what provoked the story, was this questioning. And that's such a down home kind of way of saying it. But see, you get people that take it so seriously that they go on a tour over there and they want to know, so where did it happen on the road? What do you mean? Jesus told us.
What does it matter?
You just think that this guy got beat up and it just happened to be a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan walked by? Like, come on.
Where's the historical marker?
Oh yeah, exactly. Instead of enjoying the story.
Instead, this was probably told at some place like a bar,
Yeah.
It's a bar story.
Well, look who he hung around with.
That's right.
And so I think that that sense of humor that Jesus has, is there. We just are not listening for it.
Yeah. Wow.
And so we don't, so consequently, you don't hear somebody go, I read 10 of Jesus's parables the other night and I just so enjoyed them. Nobody reads
Nobody.
that.
I've never heard
Nobody
anybody
reads that
put
way.
it in that. Yeah, I've never heard anybody put it in that term, that way, that
Is
expression.
but I mean, they're enjoyable. If you were
They
just to
are.
read just a book of just the parables,
Yeah.
like a book of short stories.
Yeah.
And Amy Jill Levine has, that's the approach she takes with
Right.
some of Jesus's parables. She calls them short stories.
Short stories. Yeah.
And that is certainly true.
Mhm.
But you had to have had a sense of humor to be able to tell them in the ways that he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So how do we regain that then? I mean, if we have lost the ability to hear it as a story, to be able to allow ourselves to enjoy it, how do we recapture that? And at the same time, not lose the fact that yes, Jesus tells these stories because they have a truth in them that
yes.
he wants everyone in the audience to hear. Somewhere in those parables, the listeners would find themselves in one of those characters. So how do we listen to both enjoy, but then also to glean the truth, the kernel of truth that God has for us in those, and not just the parables, but any of those biblical stories.
Well, let's stick with the parables for just a minute
Okay.
more. What does Jesus himself say about it? He
If you
says,
have,
again, this is a rough translation from
yeah,
the original language, but he says, if you have to explain a joke, it's not funny.
yeah, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Yep.
They'll get
Yeah.
it. They'll
Right.
get it. Well, see, if you have to explain a parable, it's not a good parable
Right.
because a
Yeah, they
parable,
explained them so often
yeah,
because they had to.
But you see, that's why I've never really enjoyed preaching from the parables.
Mm,
I would rather tell the parable, whichever one it is, and
mm-hmm.
then usually tell a story alongside of it.
Okay.
Instead of and the way I would do that would be to say, this story reminds me of, or maybe I tell a story that's out of history or a story out of
Mm-hmm.
my life or something, and then say, and it's always reminded me of this story that Jesus told,
Mm,
and then tell that alongside of it. But
yeah.
like, if you can't make the connection, then me explaining it's not really going to help you a lot.
Yeah.
If you don't see it, then that wasn't a good example to start with.
Yeah.
But I think I guess what I'm saying is I think to recover it is we've got to learn to read. The Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the Psalms for their meaning, then you lose the poetry of it,
Yeah.
the beauty, the wonder of the Psalms, and that's a shame because they're just great.
Oh, they are.
Um,
And that's one of the few places that I still enjoy reading them in King James, because of the poetic
the
sound of
language,
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah. Because see, if you were going for the meaning of the Psalms, King James doesn't really work
right, right.
because the language has changed just enough that they can be kind of off kilter sometimes.
Yeah, they're very cumbersome. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, for the beauty of it, we do that with some hymns. We still sing hymns in an older language
Yeah,
because of the beauty of the hymn, the poetry of the hymn.
yeah,
And that translate it kind of ruins some of that.
yeah.
And so I guess I go back to that I don't think somebody says, I was reading the Gospel of John the other day and I just so enjoy that book.
Yeah.
Is because nobody reads it that way. First of all, nobody reads it without verses and chapters,
Right.
which are completely
That they didn't
artificial.
have. Yeah.
Don't have anything to do with the way
Right.
John wrote it. John's got some funny stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
Just laugh out loud funny. And Nobody chuckles when they read through John.
Yeah. The story of Jesus, his first miracle, the wedding at Cana, the back and forth between he and his mom,
Yeah, yeah,
it's almost like a teenager,
yeah,
even though he's not a
yeah.
teenager, but it's almost like a teenager and their mom bickering together,
And you
it's
can see them both going, gee,
yeah,
children. And the other one going, moms.
yeah,
I mean, he says, woman, why are you even talking to me right now?
yeah,
Why, don't bother me with this.
yeah,
And then he turns around and does exactly what his mother asked him to do.
yeah, yeah.
Now that's funny.
It is, yeah.
And there are mothers and sons in the audience hearing that for the first time and thinking,
Yep,
that's just him. That's her.
yep.
Uh,
Been there,
and
done that.
well, and the way John presents conversations,
Mm,
the Nicodemus conversation,
yeah.
right? What how do I crawl back up into my mother's womb? I mean, that's a funny conversation. And again, well, and you got to think, nobody read the book of John. It
Right.
was read to them.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody read the book, but I'm just saying that most people heard it. And so it was an oral experience, which it's a little easier to get humor. You can use the right tone of voice.
Facial expressions,
Yeah.
all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those speak volumes sometimes.
Well, they do. They do. And again, I think that's what we, don't put feelings in emails or texts because you can't, the nuances of what you're saying are not in those. Well, I think that's where we are with the scriptures at times, is that we don't hear them anymore. Jesus doesn't say he says those who have ears, let them hear. He doesn't say anything about those with eyes need to read. And so I think we've lost a little bit of that because, again, when the scriptures were written, they were always read. They were spoken. What is it in Revelation? It says, blessed is the one who reads this aloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's acknowledging that that's how it's going to be done. That someone's going to read this to you. Yeah. And then at the end of Revelation, it says, blessed is the one who has heard this.
So maybe we need to quit putting the words to the scripture on the screen for the congregation.
Well, now that's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought.
And so that people just really, because it does affect, you do kind of prioritize one sense over the other, and so if we didn't have the words on the screen, then people might be more apt to really listen to the scripture.
To hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm proofreading a book that has to go to the editor or something, I usually read it out loud, just to hear it and think, well, gee, that doesn't make any sense that way. I need to redo that sentence, or that's got too many B's running in a straight line. You hear it differently than you write it, and but you're right. I think that maybe we haven't prioritized the oral nature of things.
Yeah,
we as pastors. And then sometimes I think we just need to point out to people, listen, folks, this is funny.
Yeah.
Yesterday in the Easter sermon, I kind of built it around the way John tells the story. But I kept referring to other places in John in order to let it make sense of how this story gets told near the end. But I pointed out that in John 9, it's a long story. One of the longest in John is the healing of the blind man. It is hilarious. It's a funny story. and nobody reads it that way. Is he gets healed by this guy, and then Jesus goes on off. He's in the crowd. He's everywhere. And they say, "Who healed you?" The officials do. And he goes, "I don't know."
Oh,
It's like, well, he healed you. Why don't you know? I was blind. I mean, come on. That is
yeah,
funny stuff.
yeah,
Is
it
they're
is.
asking the blind guy to tell him what he saw.
Yeah.
Well, he was blind. But the great thing is, so they go interview his parents. And they're like, "Look, he's old enough to answer for himself. We're not getting into this." So again, I mean, it's this hilarious exchange.
Yes.
Um, and and nobody reads it that way. It's not a comedy of errors,
Yeah.
which is the way John writes it.
Yeah. So they need to have a class in seminary on how to read the scripture from
Funny.
a sense, yeah, from a sense of humor, with a sense of
Yeah,
humor.
yeah. Here are all the funny things that you've
Yeah.
missed all these
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and you're right. And sometimes it takes a really good Greek teacher or a really good Hebrew teacher to point them out to you to say,
True.
"Do
Yeah.
you get this?"
Yeah.
Um, that so again, I think that's part of how we've lost some of that joy, that enjoyment, um, because we've translated it out,
Wow.
and not on purpose. There's no evil intent here. We're trying to hear it, but our ears aren't tuned to Greek and they're not tuned to Hebrew.
Right. Right.
So we got to hear it. We get to hear it in English.
Yeah.
And some people get so serious about that then they require you to read it only in one translation,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense at all because
No,
language keeps changing and
it does. Yeah.
um, uh, you know, you don't. Um, I would say one of the best translations, and it's not a complete translation, is Clarence Jordan's Cotton Patch Version.
Yeah.
And he comes very close to getting the humor across in places. But he's only, it's not the whole New Testament, and he died
Right.
before he finished John, and um,
But at least it's enough to kind of whet your appetite and
yeah,
to make you start looking at other passages of scripture differently,
right,
and
right.
approaching them from a different
Um,
standpoint.
so there are times that I will find myself thinking, I wonder how Jordan uh, figured this out. Like how
Yeah.
did he do it?
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
sometimes the message, even though it's, not completely, but sometimes the message might have a little bit more of a realistic take on something. So,
right, right. Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, Peterson kind of gets in there at times where
yeah.
you get it with without necessarily thinking, okay, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I mean, do we really approach every book we read that way? I wonder what the author meant by this scene, or what the author meant by this.
Yeah.
No, if it's a good book, you want to see what happens next, or a good movie. Um,
And I don't think most people really approach it from what does this mean anyway, because they don't want to really look at the context of what was written. So if you really want to know what it means, you've got to approach the context.
well, you've
And
got to
we
read
just
the
want to
whole
take the
thing.
words on the page. Yeah, we just want the words
Yeah,
on the page and not the context in which they were written. So that's what
yeah.
most people do.
I did a study on the before I wrote the book, the Storyteller Looks at John book. Before
Hmm.
I did that, I was just teaching at church. I think it was like 8 sessions on John,
Hmm.
and every week the assignment was go back and read the whole book before we get back together next week.
Yeah, yeah,
But I would challenge them, find a different translation, read it again.
that's good. Yeah,
But the idea was that every week you were going to read through the whole book,
yeah.
not 2 verses. I mean, think about it, Ginger. Nobody reads that way.
No,
Nobody reads a book and says, pick a novel. Gone with the Wind. I don't care, any novel.
Not in a week.
But nobody says, I think I'm going to read a paragraph on page 112, and I'm going to read a paragraph on page 250, and I'm going to read another paragraph on page 364, and somehow think they're going to get the meaning of the book. Nobody would read that way.
Which is what they do when they read the Bible, because
Sure.
the numbers are artificial. The chapters and verses are artificial.
But even we just hop from book to book. I'm going to read in Psalms. I'm going to read this passage in Hosea, and then I'm going to read something in Matthew, and expect it all to make sense.
Yeah, you can't understand the New Testament without having read the Old Testament.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because Jesus was Jewish. He was Jewish, and so you have to understand that context that he came out of.
And without that, you miss the humor of it too.
Yeah, you do. You do. So, well, this past Sunday was Easter, and as we were talking earlier before we started, had wonderful Easter services. And an ancient tradition has been picked up by some churches in recent years, and that is the observance of Holy Humor Sunday, or what was at one time called Bright Sunday.
Bright Sunday.
And and it had its origins in the early churches of Greece as a way to continue the celebration of Easter joy, but they did it by having parties and picnics and even playing practical jokes on each other, especially their pastors. Now, I haven't told my congregation about the especially their pastors part. I'm afraid of what I might get. But they would dance.
That's okay. I can send an email.
They would dance and sing and tell jokes, and it was all meant to express the tremendous joy in the resurrected Christ and his laughing in the face of death. In fact, the custom was rooted in the musings of early church theologians like Augustine, however you want to say it, Gregory of Nyssa, and John of Chrysostom, that God played a practical joke on the devil by raising Jesus from the dead. And in the joyful newsletter, they say about Holy Humor Sunday that the custom was rooted in the musings of the early church theologians. It was called Risus Paschalis, the Easter laugh. So they called it the Easter laugh. So in your many years as a pastor, have any of your churches observed Holy Humor Sunday? And if so, what were some of the highlights of those Holy Humor worship services?
No. But
I find that surprising from you, Charles.
Well,
you disappointed me.
Yeah, but
I know, I'm just teasing.
If every Sunday is a little Easter,
that's true. Yeah.
If we consider that the whole year,
yep.
I'm not sure I've been able to confine my humor to one Sunday.
That I can agree with. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, there are too many wonderful things that have happened in churches.
Right.
And again, you can laugh at things that have happened and not make fun of people. There is a difference of humor and cruelty and mockery. But I think about moments where we've just laughed together at something.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I've been able to confine my warped sense of humor. I did this in a Bible study. I did not do this in worship, I will confess. But my grandmother had just a delightful sense of humor.
Uh-huh.
And as her siblings did. And so I got to know my great aunts and my great uncle that were her siblings. And it was just so much fun to be around them, but it was just the way they talked and the way they were, and everything was a pun or a joke or a prank, even at times. And grandmother would tell jokes, and honestly, I'm trying to remember why I told this to this Bible study but it was the only off-color joke I can ever remember my grandmother telling. And that is that she said that she would explain it because we were little children, and she would explain to us that when she was a little girl, like we were little children, that women would tuck a handkerchief in, as she said, in their bosom, meaning
Yeah.
between, them and the bra.
Yeah.
And she said one day this woman was about to sneeze and she began to dig around trying to find the handkerchief and sneezed and couldn't come up with the handkerchief and then looked up at everybody and said, "Well, there were two in there when I started." Well, as a child, everybody laughed, but as a child, I really didn't think see why that was funny. I mean, I think I was like 15 before I realized that is hilarious. But the fact that my proper grandmother told that story made it
Yeah.
funnier, which is why people laugh so much when she told it. Well, see, it's a matter of translation. I didn't have enough. I just didn't
That's
know.
true.
But
Oh, that's
but I
great.
mean, that's a hilarious story. And that one little story is such an insight into my grandmother
Yeah.
that she was always doing things that there were probably a lot more things hidden around in her joking that I never understood
Yeah.
and didn't
Well,
remember.
and that's one of the things that, we're singing camp type songs and having a good time. And one of the things I have said is for people to come with funny stories from the life of the church, because,
Oh yeah.
there's tons of them. And of course, being fairly new to the congregation, I don't know them yet. I want to know them. But what does sharing those types of stories, what impact does that have on a church?
Well, I think it brings it so much closer together
Yeah.
because laughter does that.
Yeah.
Is that I think I told you that there was a period of time that in local pastors licensing school, there was a not course, but a little piece of their course
Hmm.
that I led on humor and pastoral care, and just talking about the necessity as a pastor in that role of being able to have a sense of humor, but
Hmm.
also to convey humor, to laugh with people. And sometimes people will tell you something that is funny,
Yeah.
but it'll be in a difficult moment.
Yeah.
But they just want to be able to laugh at themselves or
Right.
something ridiculous that they did, that they just need to laugh a little bit. And I think in like what you're talking about in worship, because see what you'll get is, oh, don't you remember the time,
Yeah.
and then they'll tell you some other story that
Yeah.
again will be a great story,
Yeah.
a fun story.
Hmm.
Um, we at a church I served on Lookout Mountain, well, my first full-time appointment, um, we had this woman that just made delicious um, apple pies, folded over,
Hmm. Hand pies.
fried apple pies.
Fried pies. Yeah.
Yeah, fried
Yeah.
pies. I mean, they just melted in your mouth. And everybody at the church was a good cook.
Uh-huh.
And we would have covered basket suppers. We didn't have covered dish.
Oh, wow.
Everybody brought a
That's good.
basket of
Yeah.
food. But they all know who made the best of everything.
Hmm.
So they didn't compete with each other. This woman, she's the one that brought the fried apple pies.
Yeah.
Everybody made them,
Yeah.
but everybody knew hers were the best.
Yeah.
And somebody else's banana pudding was the best. And so she's the one that brought the banana pudding. Well, um, so I was out visiting. We only had one car. We were up on Lookout Mountain. It's semi-flat on top of the mountain. So I was doing it by bicycle. And I'd gone out and visited. And I just stopped by her house. Uh, she was on the way to some of the other visits. And we had this nice little short visit. And she said, "Hey, I just finished some fried apple pies. Well, my mouth's watering already. And she had a paper plate and she laid them out and there were 6. Well, I'm on a bike. And so she folded the paper plate and put it down in a little bag and said, "Now, here's some for you and Janice." So I put them in the little pouch behind the seat and off I go. Well, I got down the road a little bit before the next house and I thought, it'd be really good to eat one of those. So I ate one and, kept going. I made 4 more visits. And when I got home, I just threw away the empty paper plate. And I didn't tell Janice about them. I didn't even, I thought, there's no reason to mention this. So, of course, Sunday comes and the woman goes up to Janice and said, "Hey, how'd you like the apple pies?" And Janice is like, "What are you talking about?" So, needless to say, word went around the church, and they're all laughing at, don't give Charles food for Janice if he's, if he has to take it home because it's not going to get there. So we had a church supper soon after that. She had a whole thing of fried apple pies, but had a lid on it. So I wrote in very neat handwriting, "Do not open," and just laid it on top of the fried apple pies. Nobody opened it. I did it as a joke. I thought, oh, they'll get it.
Oh my goodness.
No. Nobody opened it. So when I sat down at the table, it was a long, long table. I had fried apple pies on my plate. Well, they hadn't seen them. And they all, you could see everybody like, "Where did you get?" And then it was like, oh. And so from then on, they were pulling jokes on me all the time. And I'm just saying that because that was such an endearing thing. It was such a fun thing that we could kid with each other that way.
Yeah.
And laugh about things at each other, And I think you're right. Well, I mentioned funerals, I think there's a moment that you need to be able to laugh.
Yeah, definitely.
To nod, approve, smile and like, "Yep, that was my mom."
Right.
Yep. There was a fellow at that church and I loved being around this man, and he kind of lived on the edge, and he came to church occasionally. His wife was there all the time, but he came when he could work it in. She, on the other hand, worried about me hanging around him. She never felt like I was going to influence him, but she was fearful that he might influence me. And so,
She didn't have much faith in her pastor, did she?
No, she did not. She had a lot of faith in her husband to lead people down the wrong path. But so anyway, the men in the community fox hunted. It was a really big thing.
Like the horseback fox hunt, the old that you see. Oh, okay.
You built a fire, you let the dogs go, and you sat by the fire and you listened to dogs all night.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Okay.
It was, but see, that was the only kind. I'd never been on a fox hunt, much horseback or not. But that was the only image I had. So he says, "You want to go?" I was like, "Well, yeah." So we go out, and these dogs, they get to running and everything. Well, eventually, and I said, "What are we going to do when we catch the fox?" And they all laughed. They said, "We're not going to catch a fox." And I mean, I'm stunned. I'm like, "You got all these dogs, you got all this investment in this." And I said, "Well, what are we going to do then?" And they said, "Listen. We're going to listen," which made no sense to me. Well, here the dogs are running and they're in the distance. Well, eventually they get so far away, you can't hear anything. And I said, and I'm like, are we going to move? Like, are we going to go to where they are? And they were like, they'll be back. And then that's the other part of to listen. They start telling stories.
Yeah.
See, and they had a new one.
Yeah.
I was a kid, that they had this new guy. Well, they trotted out all the stories that they all knew.
Yeah.
And I always like to tell people that they told me things that they wanted that had happened in the community. They really did.
Yeah.
But then they also told me things that they wanted me to believe that had happened in the community. And I mean, they tugged at my leg. They just had me for dinner that night. It was just hilarious.
Yeah.
But I heard stories about the history of that community that went back to the Civil War.
Wow.
I heard a guy describe something that his grandfather had told him.
Wow.
So that meant that I heard a Civil War story secondhand.
Yeah.
It had only passed through one person to get to me. So that happened there. So it was a great, great moment. But
Yeah.
they told me all kinds of stories, and they were hilarious. And then they got to trying to outdo each other to tell me the biggest story.
Yeah.
But see, that became a bond that I had with that group of men that I never would have.
Right.
So the end of this story I'm telling is that guy died on a fox hunt.
Wow.
And I was at annual conference. And so I had to leave annual conference and go back to do his funeral.
Yeah.
And he had done some things in his life kind of on the edge of respectability. You could see respectability from where he was. So I told some stories at the funeral of him. But I said how valuable storytelling was for us as a community, that he had helped us remember. Well, his 3 sons came up to me afterwards and said, "We had no idea what you were going to be able to say about our dad."
Wow.
And they said, first of all, your sermon, meaning these stories I told, was shorter than most of his stories, which was funny. I mean, and we laughed at that. Like, yep, you're right. But they said, we just didn't know what you could say. And that's kind of sad in one way, but the other way was everybody left smiling about good old Roy.
Yeah.
And so years later, I was invited to go back, and some of them said, "Hey, tell some of those stories that you heard on that fox hunt."
Yeah.
And so it was a community thing. And I think that's part of the joy of worship.
Yeah.
But also, Jadra, I think by doing it like this Sunday, I think you get to model how worship can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way every time.
Oh, yeah. 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 You've probably been around me enough, and of course, my brothers, and that we're, that made you laugh just even saying that. But,
yeah.
I mean, we
sometimes I really have a hard time remembering that they are your brothers.
I know. And some people still don't know that we are related, but surprisingly. But I mean, we love to laugh. It's just our whole family has loved to laugh, and we've grown up playing practical jokes on each other, and it came down from uncles and aunts and what have you. So it's just a part of our DNA. And so it's hard for me to be in worship and never have some place in there that there is some laughter, kind of like you. Even on those solemn times, there's a place to interject some humor in the right, appropriate, authentic way.
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
Sure. But I think it's important because if we're created in the image of God, then and we laugh, then obviously God had a sense of humor, as we've already mentioned. He made us. But that joy that God has, and so why would we not want to delight as much as God delights? And so to share that in worship.
And to go back kind of where we started is that if we're not enjoying worship,
Yeah,
then are we very joyful?
right.
I mean,
And
I
I
think
have seen some people in worship that and you could tell they weren't very joyful the rest of the time in either. I mean, it
yeah,
was just, yeah, but
right,
very
right.
few. Yeah,
Well, they don't see anything
yeah. I
amusing.
was gonna look up a quote. I can't remember where I put it. I can't remember. It may have been Luther, but something about the degree. I don't have the quote right in front of me, but something about the degree of our humor is, or the degree of our faith is equal to the degree of our humor, our ability to laugh. And
Hmm.
I can't remember if it was Luther. I'll have to find it and send it to you.
Yeah,
But
do.
I
I'd like
thought
to see that.
how how wise that is, really, to look at it that way. And
Well, yeah, I think, well, like you said, Easter's the ultimate,
yeah,
and we say, oh, well, no, that's not a joke. Yeah, no. Um, the force of evil or Satan or whatever name you want to give that force,
yeah, yeah,
gets tricked.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, they think they've nailed Jesus down, and
yeah,
ultimately, no.
yeah.
Um,
Death, where is your victory? Where is your sting? Kind of thing. So, yep,
yeah,
that we say
yeah.
at every graveside, just about. So,
Well, yeah, and uh, I mean, Easter is that great moment,
yeah,
and surely there's some laughter at Easter,
oh, you would think, yeah,
and
yeah,
that I mean, like I feel like we had a really good time yesterday.
good, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. We
that
did too. Yeah,
it was an enjoyable experience,
yeah,
um, and that if we had, I don't know that anybody would have described it that way, and that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
They might have said, "Wow, it was very meaningful. It really touched me." There might have been other ways
yeah.
about it, but
I had some people actually say they enjoyed it, so
well, I mean
so
that's
I'll
good.
take it. I'll
I
take it.
think yeah, I
You
think,
know.
but that's worship on a good day.
Yeah, yeah. Before we close, would you have a blessing over our service next week? I would appreciate it if you would do that for us.
Yeah, let me think about it. I mean that's a good thought.
So,
Um, may you may you hear the laughter of God
mm,
in the service that you're going to have together amid your own laughter. Amen.
amen. Thank you.
Be on Sunday. Be on Sunday. Be on Sunday.